For people who self-gaslight in adulthood, in their current relationship, it is quite likely, I'm not going to say 100%, because nothing is 100%, but I'm going to say it's quite likely, if you know what I mean, that they missed out on sufficient. You've heard the term gaslighting. Maybe you're experiencing gaslighting in your marriage, and maybe you've heard the idea that you're gaslighting yourself. Why does that happen? Well, self-gaslighting is doing the crazy making to yourself, trying to make yourself believe that what you know intuitively is not true, or the evidence that you get through your own senses should not be trusted. We're going to do a deep dive. Why does that happen? Why do people do that? Let me introduce myself. I'm Dr. Don Russell. I'm the founder of the Russell Healing Institute, and that's where we help women through a program called Detox Your Marriage. We help women flourish in extremely difficult marriages if they have chosen that they want to stay. Of course, if you want to leave, then leave. I'm not telling you what to do. But if you have, faith convictions, perhaps because you're a follower of Jesus, and you discern from your relationship with God that faithfulness in marriage is important, and so you want to find a way to make your marriage work, then we understand that. We share that conviction, by the way, and we help women in those kinds of situations. So click the link below to find out more. Also, while you're at it, so why don't you subscribe to this channel so you can learn more, be one of the first to find out when new content is released. And that also helps other women struggling in similar kinds of situations get access to this material. First, I want to remind you that I'm a therapist. I've been practicing for almost 30 years, but I'm not your therapist. And so I ask you to take full responsibility for yourself and use this as information, not as professional therapy. Okay, so if you haven't watched my video on self-gaslighting, I strongly recommend that video up there. It will help. Self-gaslighting, it's not good, but why do people do it to themselves? In this short video, I'm going to give the easy answer to that and also the deep dive. Okay, spoiler alert, you need to know the deep dive. If you're a woman that recognizes that you're getting gaslighting from your narcissist husband, you've watched the previous video where I broke down self-gaslighting, then you're beginning to understand that there is a strong connection to being the victim of gaslighting and self-gaslighting. The gaslighting pattern is being taught to you, or you're being trained to gaslight yourself. You could even say that you're being hypnotized by your husband into a belief system that is not reality-based. So if that statement freaks you out a little bit, then you're understanding what I'm saying. But let's go deeper. Why would a person start believing something that another part of them knows isn't true? That's the crazy making, right? So it's important to understand gaslighting in the broader context of this kind of relationship. Typically, there's a pattern or history of conflict or disagreements not going well. Check out that video up there to learn more about the 4 most common ways that conflict goes poorly and what to do about it. Right? Disagreements turn into character attacks, or disagreements turn into emotionally heated arguments over right and wrong. And so like a winner and a loser has to be established. And that pattern is extremely unpleasant. It's corrosive to the soul, and it strongly predicts divorce. It makes sense that the soul of the gaslighter, the heart of the gaslighter says, so to speak, I know how to avoid that train wreck. I'll dismiss the evidence that leads to the fights and the arguments, and I'll just simply accept the story he's telling me, and I will jump on board and I will tell myself the same story. He wasn't really flirting with her at the party, or he wasn't really lying to me about where he was last night, or he is really stressed at work right now, and so it's understandable that he acts that way, and any reasonable wife would forgive him immediately and, let it go, right? That kind of crazy making. So what we have is the self-gaslighting keeps the relationship away from that kind of conflict, and it's an attempt to keep the peace in the relationship and keep the peace in the heart and soul. Only problem is the self-gaslighting does neither with integrity, does neither of those things legitimately. But when you hear me say it's to keep the peace, can you also hear yourself, your own heart and soul, say, it's not worth it. It's not worth it, right? So there's still a part of your heart and soul that's saying, that's crazy, that's not worth it, that's not right, I don't want to do that. So we need to take an even deeper dive. Why does she do it in the relationship with the narcissist beyond, just conflict avoidance? We need to do a little aside here. Stick with me. This is important. You will thank me at the end of the video. In a child's emotional and mental development, one of the tasks, one of the things that a child needs to grow in a healthy way is this ingredient called validation. So, for example, a child is learning to walk, and in the course of learning to walk, of course, is going to stumble and fall. All necessary and inevitable. It's okay. And as the child is taking those first steps and stumbles and, hits their head on the coffee table of doom, right? Every child meets the coffee table, whacks their head. Why is it always the coffee table? Anyway, it's painful and it hurts. And what happens next is pivotal. Does the mom or caregiver respond with, oh, that must really hurt? Or does the caregiver, usually mom, respond with, dismissal, ignoring, or downplaying, right? Making light of it, ignoring it, in somehow minimizing the hurt. Now, listen carefully. I'm a big fan of resilience, right? I'm a big fan of the capacity to bounce back from adversity with grit and determination, right? Even in the coffee table episode. However, the external acknowledgement for that child of the hurt is actually foundational. It's bedrock. It is the bedrock upon which the child can build the good stuff like resilience. When the caregiver gives that child the validation of, oh, wow, that looks like that really hurt. It's actually teaching the child self-validation so the child can learn to do the validating for themselves. It is the only way. And that is critical. That is an essential ingredient because the hurt can only be put to rest or digested and built upon after it's been named and acknowledged. And the only way that child is going to learn to do that if the child gets it from an external, from the mom, from the caregiver. For people who self-gaslight in adulthood, in their current relationship, it is quite likely, I'm not going to say 100% because nothing is 100%, but I'm going to say it's quite likely, if you know what I mean, that they missed out on sufficient validation as a child and failed to learn to self-validate sufficiently. So, fast forward into the current relationship, the husband, which is what we're talking about here, is attempting to gaslight the wife. And because there isn't the mechanism to self-validate and say, no, I'm pretty sure I remember what happened, or no, I'm pretty sure I know that's not my perfume that I'm smelling on his collar, right? Those kinds of things. If the child didn't get sufficient validation. The child didn't learn sufficiently to self-validate. And now in the current relationship, if you will, the inner child just jumps on board the gaslighting that the husband is doing. So that's bad news. That's a little depressing and frustrating, and should be frustrating and angering to you. Is that the end of the story? No way, because that video up there is going to show you how you can change that. All right? So click subscribe to this channel, leave a comment down below, and like this video, because that helps other women in your kind of a situation get access to this content, which can literally prevent divorce. All right? Thanks for being on this video, and I wish you well.